There are problems, there are crises, and then there are black swan events. A problem is a tough quarter. A crisis is losing a major client. A black swan event is when the market collapses, your supply chain is wiped out, and your factory burns down, all in the same week. It's a complete, catastrophic, multi-front system failure. It's the moment when all the rules you understood, all the systems you built, all the securities you relied on, are simultaneously erased. It's the diagnosis from the doctor, followed by the pink slip from your boss, followed by the discovery of a deep betrayal. It's the perfect storm. In these moments, conventional advice is not only useless, it's insulting. Stay positive. Everything happens for a reason. What doesn't kill you makes you stronger. These are platitudes designed for manageable problems. They are meaningless when you are standing at ground zero of your own life. When a black swan event occurs, you are not dealing with a problem in the system. You are dealing with the failure of the system itself. And it requires a completely different kind of protocol. This is not a video about how to avoid suffering. This is a strategic briefing on how to build a protocol for enduring the unsurvivable. For this, we have to turn to the most brutal, honest, and strategically dense case study on catastrophic failure ever written, the Book of Job. For centuries, we have treated this story as a philosophical debate on the nature of God and the problem of evil. But that is a mistake. That is not the story's primary function. The Book of Job is a leadership document. It is a blow-by-blow account of a high performer navigating a complete system collapse. We are going to deconstruct it not as theologians, but as crisis managers. We will ignore the question of why it happened and focus entirely on the strategic responses of the man at the center of the storm. Because what Job did, his process, his protocol, is a timeless blueprint for anyone who has to lead themselves and others when everything has been lost. If you have ever felt like you're in a fight you can't win, hit that like button. We're about to study the master. Let's begin by analyzing the system before the failure. Who was Job? The text introduces him not as a pious man, but as a great one. He is described as the greatest man among all the people of the East. This is not a spiritual assessment. This is a statement of his market position. Let's translate this into modern terms. Job was the CEO of a massive, diversified, and highly successful enterprise. He had 7 sons and 3 daughters. This was his board of directors, his legacy, his succession plan. His livestock included 7,000 sheep, 3,000 camels, 500 yoke of oxen, and 500 donkeys. This was his asset portfolio. Camels were the long-haul trucking of the ancient world. Oxen were the heavy machinery. He was a magnate in logistics, agriculture, and transport. He had a very large household of servants. This was his workforce, and he had his personal brand. He was a man who was blameless and upright. He feared God and shunned evil. In the language of strategy, his integrity was his most valuable intangible asset. It was the source of his reputation and his social capital. So Job is not just a good man. He is a well-managed, highly integrated, successful system. His wealth, his family, and his reputation are all interconnected and performing at the highest level. Then comes the black swan. The text presents it as a series of reports delivered by messengers who arrive one after another in rapid succession. The pacing is intentional. It's designed to convey the shocking speed and totality of the collapse. First messenger. The oxen were plowing and the donkeys were feeding beside them, and the Sabians attacked and made off with them. They put the servants to the sword, and I am the only one who has escaped to tell you. Translation: His agricultural production and heavy machinery division has been wiped out by a hostile takeover. While he is still speaking, a second messenger arrives. The fire of God fell from the heavens and burned up the sheep and the servants, and I am the only one who has escaped to tell you. Translation: A natural disaster, a force majeure, has destroyed his core inventory and supply chain. While he is still speaking, a third messenger arrives. The Chaldeans formed 3 raiding parties and swept down on your camels and made off with them. They put the servants to the sword, and I am the only one who has escaped to tell you. Translation: His logistics and transport division has been eliminated by organized competitors. And while he is still speaking, a fourth, final messenger arrives. Your sons and daughters were feasting, when suddenly a mighty wind swept in from the desert and struck the 4 corners of the house. It collapsed on them and they are dead. And I am the only one who has escaped to tell you. Translation: His board of directors, his entire succession plan, has been instantly and completely annihilated. In the space of a few minutes, Job's entire enterprise is gone. His assets, his workforce, his legacy, everything he has built is erased. And then, the crisis becomes personal. He is struck with painful sores from the soles of his feet to the crown of his head. His own physical system begins to fail. His health is gone. He is left with nothing but his wife, who gives him some of the worst advice in history. Curse God and die. And he is sitting in a pile of ashes, the literal ruins of his former life. This is ground zero. This is complete system failure. This is the moment that breaks most people. What is Job's first action? It is a protocol. It is a process for grieving. The text says, he got up and tore his robe and shaved his head. Then he fell to the ground in worship. He does not deny the reality of the situation. He performs the culturally understood rituals of catastrophic loss. He is processing the data, as painful as it is. He is not suppressing it. He is not pretending it didn't happen. And then we get to the second phase of the crisis, the arrival of the bad consultants. Job's 3 friends, Eliphaz, Bildad, and Zophar, hear about his tragedy and come to sympathize with him and comfort him. For 7 days and 7 nights, they sit with him in silence because they see that his suffering is very great. This is the most helpful thing they do in the entire book. But then they start talking. And their advice is a masterclass in how not to help someone in a black swan crisis. Their arguments, spread over dozens of chapters, can be boiled down to a single, flawed, corporate platitude. You must have done something to deserve this. They are operating on a simple, linear, cause and effect logic. Good performance leads to good outcomes. Bad outcomes must be the result of bad performance. They are convinced Job has some secret sin, some hidden operational flaw, and if he would just confess it, the system would reset. Eliphaz says, "Who, being innocent, has ever perished?" Bildad argues, "If you are pure and upright, even now he will rouse himself on your behalf." Zophar insists, "If you put away the sin that is in your hand, then you will be secure." They are trying to fit a black swan event into a standard performance review metric. Their advice is not only wrong, It is cruel. It adds the burden of guilt to the burden of grief. How often do we see this in our own lives? When someone faces a crisis, how quickly do others rush in with easy answers and flawed narratives? You should have saved more money. You should have seen the red flags. You just need to be more positive. This is the chatter of people who are terrified by the idea that a system can fail without a clear, simple reason. They need to find a cause, a fault, because it makes them feel safe. It makes them believe it could never happen to them. And this is where Job demonstrates the first step of his crisis protocol. He systematically rejects their flawed analysis. He does not accept their narrative. For chapter after chapter, he defends his integrity. He conducts a brutal internal audit of his own life and actions. And he concludes, "I have not sinned." He says, "I hold fast to my righteousness and will not let it go. My heart does not reproach me for any of my days." This is a critical strategic move. In a crisis, when you have lost all external validation, your job, your health, your wealth, your integrity, your adherence to your own internal protocol is the only asset you have left. Job refuses to corrupt his own data. He refuses to confess to a failure he did not commit, just to make his consultants feel better. He knows the system has failed, but he will not allow them to convince him that he is the failure. If you're going through a tough time and dealing with bad advice, I want you to hit the share button right now. Your quiet act of sharing might be the signal someone else needs to trust their own gut and reject the flawed narratives around them. The bulk of the book is this painful, raw debate. Job, clinging to his own data versus his friends, pushing their simplistic theory. Job becomes so frustrated with his human advisors that he eventually bypasses them. He demands a meeting with the CEO of the universe. He wants to take his case directly to God. He says, "I desire to speak to the Almighty and to argue my case with God." This is an incredibly bold move. He is essentially demanding a final, high-stakes performance review. And at the end of the book, he gets it. God finally speaks to Job out of a whirlwind. But what God says is perhaps the most shocking part of the entire story. He doesn't answer Job's questions. He doesn't explain why the black swan happened. He doesn't offer a single word of comfort. Instead, he puts Job in his place with a relentless barrage of questions designed to demonstrate the sheer scale, complexity, and power of the system he manages. Where were you when I laid the earth's foundation? Have you ever given orders to the morning or shown the dawn its place? Do you know the laws of the heavens? Can you set up God's dominion over the earth? Do you give the horse its strength or clothe its neck with a flowing mane? Question after question after question. It is a stunning display of cosmic authority. God is essentially telling Job, "You have been the CEO of your own small, successful enterprise. You have done well. But you have absolutely no comprehension of the system in which your enterprise operates. Your understanding is a single data point in an infinite spreadsheet. You do not control the market. You do not control the weather. You do not control the black swans. You only control your response." This is the ultimate strategic lesson, the turning point. Job's response is one of profound humility. He says, "Surely I spoke of things I did not understand, things too wonderful for me to know. My ears had heard of you, but now my eyes have seen you. Therefore I despise myself and repent in dust and ashes." He isn't repenting for a sin that caused his suffering. He is repenting for his arrogance, his belief that he understood the system. He finally accepts the limits of his own control. And it is only after this acceptance, this radical humility, that the rebuilding begins. The text says the Lord restored his fortunes and gave him twice as much as he had before. He has a new family, a new enterprise, a new life. The system is rebuilt, stronger and more resilient than before, founded on a new, more humble understanding of his place in the universe. So, what is the protocol? What is the practical blueprint we can extract from this brutal case study? The core principle is this: in a true black swan crisis, when you have lost control over your external circumstances, your survival depends on exerting radical control over your internal protocol. Your identity must be anchored to your process and your principles, not your results, because your results have been temporarily wiped out. Here is the 3-step job protocol for navigating complete system failure. Step 1. Conduct a brutal asset inventory. When the storm hits, your first move must be to get ruthlessly objective. The temptation is to focus on the totality of your loss. Don't. Take out a piece of paper or open a document. Draw a line down the middle. On the left side, list everything you have lost. Be specific. The job title, the monthly income, the relationships, the physical abilities. Get it all out. Now, on the right side, list every asset you have left. No matter how small, your skills, your experience, your knowledge, your core principles of integrity and work ethic, your physical breath, the fact that you are still here, able to write this list. In a crisis, your mind will fixate on the left side of the page. Your protocol is to force your attention deliberately and repeatedly to the right side. These are the foundational bricks you will use to rebuild. You must know what you still have. Step 2. Reject flawed narratives. Just like Job's friends, people will rush in with simplistic explanations. Your own mind will be the worst offender, creating narratives of guilt, shame, and hopelessness. Your protocol is to become a ruthless gatekeeper of the stories you allow yourself to believe. When a thought like, "This is all my fault," enters your mind, you must challenge it. Label it. That is the Eliphaz narrative. It is based on flawed data. I reject it. When you hear, "You will never recover from this," you label it. That is the Zophar narrative. It is a prediction, not a fact. I reject it. You cannot control the external events, but you have absolute authority over the meaning you assign to them. Do not allow anyone, including yourself, to add the poison of a flawed narrative to the pain of your reality. Step 3. Establish a minimum viable process. When your entire system is in ruins, you cannot think about 5-year plans. You must think in terms of the next 24 hours. Your goal is to establish a single, non-negotiable daily process that you can control. This is your new anchor of identity. For Job, his process was showing up every day and defending his integrity. That was the one thing he could do. What is yours? It needs to be simple, actionable, and entirely within your power. It could be, I will spend 1 hour every morning applying for new jobs, no matter how many rejections I get. It could be, I will walk for 30 minutes every day, even if I don't feel like it. It could be, I will write 500 words of my book, even if it's terrible. This minimum viable process is how you rebuild. It is proof to yourself that you are not just a victim of circumstance. You are still an agent. You are still a builder. The scale of your building has changed, but the identity has not. Let's recap the protocol. 1. Conduct a brutal asset inventory, focusing on what you have left. 2. Ruthlessly reject the flawed narratives of others and of your own mind. 3. Establish a daily, minimum viable process that you can control. This is not a plan for a quick recovery. This is a protocol for endurance. It is a framework for walking through the fire and coming out the other side not just intact, but refined. Job's story is a testament to the fact that your greatest strength is not your ability to control the storm, but your commitment to your protocol within it. So, here is your immediate next step. Don't wait for a crisis. Do it tonight. Take 5 minutes and do the first part of step 1. Just write down 3 of your core, intangible assets. 3 skills, character traits, or pieces of knowledge that cannot be taken from you, no matter what happens to your career or your health. That list, that is the foundation of your own job protocol. Know your anchors before the storm ever hits.